Hello everyone, welcome to Geometrynodes in 3.0. Today, we'll be making this ocean wave effect. So let's get started. First, what we want to do is make a new scene with a new plane. And let's subdivide this plane to get more resolution. So, let's use a subdivision surface node, set this to simple, set the amount of subdivisions to about 7, and turn off use limit surface because that just makes it faster. Let's add in a new geometry node and use a set position node. This will be the only node you will need, the rest will just be inputs and math. Let's use a position node as the input, and use a vector separate XYZ node to separate the axes. So let's plug this in right here, and let's use a combine XYZ node to plug into the offset. This will make it so that we control the Z offset, the X offset independently. So let's get the wave effect going. Let's use a cosine node, hook this up to the x-axis. Let's use a multiply node beforehand so that we control how many waves we get. Let's set this to something like that, and plug this into the z-axis. And as we can see, we're already getting waves. Let's set this to pi times 2. This will give us 1 wave per meter, and since this plane is 2 meters, it's giving us 2 waves. Next, let's control the height of this effect by using another multiply node. When we move this up, we get 1 meter or 2 meter tall waves because it does 1 meter above and below. If we set this to 0.25, it'll give us a 0.5 meter wave. Okay, so now what if we want to animate this effect? Well, let's bring this over here a little bit more and add in a add node. So if we move this add node, keep adding to it, it looks like the wave is now animated. But to animate it according to the frame, let's input hashtag frame divided by 48. And as we can see, the wave is now moving along with our animation since it's playing. Let's set this to subtract to make it go the opposite direction. Okay, now we have the basic effect lined up. But what if we want to control how sharp these waves are? Well, to do that, it's actually pretty simple. We just have to copy our cosine and multiply nodes, bring them up here, set this one to sine, and put the multiply into the x-axis. And if we control this, we can see we're starting to get sharp waves. And if we do the opposite, of course, we get kind of like rolling hills, so you can make a separate effect based off that. But yeah, that's a basic effect on how to make these waves. But let's add in the noise and a little bit of extra stuff. So, first of all, let's make these waves kind of tilt in one direction to make it look like they're about to crash. So, to do that, let's add in an add node to the x-axis, and copy the multiply of the cosine node, and hook this into the add. As we can see, we're starting to get some tilt. And we can control this very easily by using this node. If we want an extreme tilt, which is completely unrealistic, we could do that. But let's set this to something like 0.2. 0.2 or 0.15 seems pretty good. There we go. Let's organize these nodes a little bit. There we are. So the top one, as a reminder, is how sharp the wave is. The second one is the tilt. And the next is the height. Okay, next up is to add in some noise to make these look more realistic. So to do that, let's add in another add node to the x-axis right here. Set this to add, put it over there. And have another position node to feed into our noise texture, which will give us the offset we need. Let's set this to 2D noise just to make it faster, and add in a multiply node after the noise texture. So if we hook this together with the add node right here, we can see that we are getting extremely noisy waves. A little bit too noisy, but we could fix that by just changing the scale to about 1. As we can see, we're getting, relatively good waves, but if you want more detail, just turn up the detail to something like 5. As we can see, we're getting much more highly detailed waves. Make sure you set the shading to smooth if you haven't already. And if we change this multiply node right here, as we could see, we're getting way more detail and choppiness in our wave. You could go overboard with this and make it look more like Jello, like that. Or make more, like this could almost be a mountain range if you think about it. Which I think I might use that in the future. But back to the waves. Let's set this to something like 0.7 about. And yeah, that's looking quite nice. But there's one problem. We're not getting any difference on the z-axis, so all the waves always hit the same height. But what if we want to change that? Well, to do that, let's use a multiply node right over here afterwards, and hook the factor of the noise into this. So as we could see, if we go back into the side view, the waves are now changing in the terms of their height. So no two waves will be the exact same height. And that is basically the entire effect for these waves. Let's increase the height a little bit and maybe tone down the multiply node a bit. And yeah, that's basically the entire effect. So let's do a little bit of shading. I don't have a precise shader for these waves, but I'll give you the inputs and general gist of what you could do with it. So let's add in a new shading node, and let's use the UV map input right here. And if we look at that in the shader editor, it travels along with the wave, which will be extremely useful, as we can see, when we add in a noise texture. Let's set this to 2D. And as we could see, when we turn up the scale, the noise follows the curvature of the wave. So this could be like ocean foam or something like that. If you want to get like the crest of the waves, we could do that by using a texture coordinate node, using a converter separate XYZ node right there. Hook that up, and let's look at the z-axis. There we are. And now we're getting the crest of the waves. But if we use a map range node, map range right here, we could change the gradient to go down a little bit. This won't change with the height of the wave, so you'll have to keep adjusting this later. But now you have that input. So yeah, that is basically the entire effect. If you want to support my channel, look at my Gumroad page, my Twitter page, and subscribe, like the video, all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next tutorial. See ya!